Welcome back to the Occult Rejects. Today we're diving into one of the most important books ever written in the history of Western occultism, or at least in my opinion. The 3 books of occult philosophy. If you study magic, Hermeticism, astrology, or Renaissance philosophy, you probably have run into this work. It's not just a grimoire, it's essentially the grand synthesis of the magical worldview of the Renaissance. The author Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa wrote the book in the early 1500s, pulling together ideas from ancient Greece, Jewish Kabbalah, Neoplatonism, medieval natural philosophy, astrology, and even Christian mysticism. What he created was a massive map of the magical universe, explaining how the physical world, the celestial world, and the divine world interact through correspondences, symbols, numbers, angels, and the hidden harmonies of nature. For centuries, English readers mostly relied on translations that were based on a 17th century English version that had a number of gaps and interpretative quirks. That's where today's guest comes in. But before we introduce the rest of the panel and the guest, I do have a few announcements. Just to let people know, Saturday, April 25th, we have the 2026 Southeastern Masonic Symposium. And it is happening in Asheville Masonic Temple on 80 Broad Street in Asheville, North Carolina. I will be there, and I'll be hanging out and possibly filming some of it. But for the people on the show, I wanted to let them know that if you come down, you'll get to hang out with me. And the people speaking there will be John Michael Greer, huge name. Colin Conkright, he's been on the show before. Check it out. Great stuff. And we also got my boy, Ike Baker. He's been on the show numerous times, basically, part of the Rejects crew already. But he'll be there, and Tom Carter. So you already know just from the names that I mentioned. It's going to be banging. So come down if you're in the area and definitely check it out. And also, just real quick, I just want to remind people that we do have the Occult Institute Research, occultresearchinstitute.org. That is our website. There is tons and tons of stuff if you like to read. And if you're interested, we did finally put up, we have 2 t-shirts available. If you want to check it out, it is up on the site. If you want to order them, check them out. And that's enough out of me. And now finally, Judith, what is going on? How are you?
What is going on? How are you?
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you for being here, Eric. And
Thank you.
You can reach me. You can reach me and catch me on the weekly brunch on YouTube and on X as the Loon. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you very much, Judith. I appreciate it. And finally, to the guest, we got our guest today is Eric Purdue, an independent scholar and translator whose work focuses on restoring important occult texts to their original form. His translation of Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy went back to the original Latin editions and carefully reconstructed the text so modern readers can experience Agrippa's ideas as they were actually written. Published through Inner Traditions, which we love Inner Traditions, they always send me great authors. Purdue's edition restores passages that were missing in earlier translations and clarifies the philosophical sources Agrippa drew from figures like Marsilio Ficino, Iamblichus, and Plato. In other words, this isn't just a translation, it's a doorway back into the intellectual world of Renaissance magic. Today, we're going to talk about Agrippa himself, his life, his ideas, and why this book became one of our foundational texts for centuries of occultists, influencing everyone from Renaissance magi to modern ceremonial magic traditions. We'll also explore how these ideas were understood in their own time, when magic, science, religion, and philosophy weren't separate fields, but different ways of describing the same mysterious universe. So please, Eric, welcome to the Occult Rejects, and anything that I might have left out or anything you'd like to plug or tell anybody where they can find you, please let them know now.
Oh, we're starting with plugging.
Yes.
Well, yeah, my website is ericpurdue.com, and I'm on Instagram. Actually, I'm all the social medias except TikTok, because I'm a gray beard, and I just never latched onto TikTok. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. You can just search for my name on Instagram, on all of them. I chose a clever name of Traditional Esoterica on Instagram. But yeah, I do readings as well, and I'm currently teaching 2 groups of students on a full read through 3 books of occult philosophy. Each one's taking a year.
Oh, wow.
My first group, we're getting close to, I'd say we're about a month away from finishing book 2. So,
That is great.
yeah.
Obviously, and that's running through it if you're taking that long too. That is awesome.
Yeah, there's 200 chapters or 199 or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's a lot to get through. Yeah, I do them in groups of chapters, because they're kind of like the subjects kind of span over several chapters. So I'll do like 4 or 5, 6 chapters each time. So
Awesome. Great stuff.
yeah.
All right. I guess I'll get right into it, kind of, I guess, how I normally start with most of my guests. I guess for the listeners who may not know your work yet, can you tell us a little bit about like your background on like what first drew you into translating Renaissance occult texts? Like, how did you find yourself like there?
Well, yeah, I was a late bloomer. No, I've been practicing my introduction to. Am I going this far back?
It's up to you. As much as you want. Yeah.
When I was in kindergarten. No, not that far back. No, I got started accidentally in Santeria and leukemia. And I was looking for a teacher to teach me like Western ceremonial magic. I read a little bit of Crowley, and the person that was referred to me was a Santero. And I assumed it was neo-pagan at the time. I didn't really know anything about it. I'm a guy from a small town in Illinois, and this is pre-internet. And so I really didn't know anything. And he was very charismatic. And he didn't really say what it was at first. He was kind of, I don't know, I guess being careful. But he was also an artist. And so everything was very, I don't know, like, at the time he had sort of an Egyptian theme happening as well. So with real columns and a life-size statue of Isis and the whole thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I assumed this is neo-paganism. Like I'm fine with that. And but I gradually figured out the truth. And once I realized what they're actually doing, because he started. Let me back up. He started it as a neo-pagan temple, like in the '60s, which is why it kind of looked like that. And in the '70s, mid '70s, he brought in leukemia. He was Cuban and didn't tell anybody about it. He kind of made up like a lot of neo-pagans in the 60s and 70s, made up histories of themselves. And so his made up history was that he was Basque, and which his ancestry actually was. But and he said he was born and raised in Spain, but he was actually born and raised in Havana. I saw his birth certificate after he died. And anyway, so he did bring in leukemia, or leukemia is the other name. In the mid 70s, he was initiated in 74. And a lot of the old like hippie neo-pagans kind of like disappeared at that point. And so when I got there, he was still doing sort of neo-pagan festivals still, like seasonal ones. And which is how I got initially sort of gotten attracted, but then, but he was also doing like, initiations, giving people orishas, the whole thing. And initially I just thought it was all part of the package until I realized that, it wasn't quite like that. And, so I was with him for like 10 years. And then, well, actually I was with him for 15 years total, but after 10 years I got initiated. So it was in 2000 I got initiated. Shango, and I've been a Santeria priest for 25 years, almost 26 years next month. And that's kind of my interest. I mean, he was kind of a strange guy in that he, like most Santeros, don't really get into Western esotericism so much. And there are a few out there, but not as many. And he had a huge library, and that's why I got introduced to a lot of this. So he introduced me to Agrippa, I don't know, like in the early 90s. He knew about Picatrix. I don't know if you know, like some people may not know what it is. Maybe you might know what it is, but it's one of the main Western. It was originally Arabic, but it's not as popular in the East. But in the West, it was much more popular. but it's one of the main. It's pretty much the main source book on astrological magic in the West. And anyway, he knew about that in the 90s, which wasn't, people weren't really talking about it yet. And he hadn't read it yet either, in all fairness.
That is interesting. How, like, something that I came across, because I got into this stuff, with the internet being existing. It's wild how, like, me coming across that and just thinking that was a normal book for people to come across wasn't, 30 years ago? That is so wild to me that just to think that. Right?
Well, I mean, think about it. When did the critical edition come out? The Latin critical edition came out in the 80s, I think. And the first English translation came out in the early aughts from Ouroboros Press, and it was a very bad translation. I know William, and I like him, and a lot of the books he's published have been great, and that one was just but at the time. It's not really. I mean, honestly, it goes to show that if you know Arabic, but not classical Arabic and astrology and all that, it makes the translation very difficult. And and at the time that was published, there wasn't as much work done in pre-modern astrology yet. And unless you were like in really niche circles, you wouldn't have known about it. So there was a lot of concepts in there that were just translated very strangely. A lot of astrological terminology, especially, was translated very strangely. So really, the first, I think, really good translation was Chris Warnock and John Michael Greer's translation. There's a new one by Dan Atrell and David Perica. It came out. I mean, not that new. Maybe 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago. That's good too. And then there's a new one coming out from the translation of the Arabic in any minute. It's in production now. So anyway, so it's not as ubiquitous. I mean, it had a reputation, but it really until I would say the 2000s, maybe 2000. I think only the first two books were published there's 4 books. So the first 2 books were published, I think, in the early 2000s. And the second one came out like in 2007 or 8, something like that. So really no one had really read it in English, at least not in our circles. No one had really read it.
Really interesting to look at that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it is quoted in Agrippa a little bit, not as much as people think it is, but.
Well, that kind of,
it was in the background. And what maybe you want to do it to answer your actual question. So when my teacher died, when I was initiated, I was told to study astrology, and I didn't want to. I wasn't really into it, and I thought it was dumb. And so on a whim, I bought a copy of Tyson's 3 Books of Occult Philosophy, and I read it. Yeah. That's what everybody has. And
you're right.
I read it cover to cover, and I realized the astrology he was talking about didn't make sense to me, and it was very different than the astrology I had heard about, and which led me down a rabbit hole. I rediscovered Picatrix because my teacher had talked about it, and no one had really translated it from Latin yet. And so that was actually my first project, and it wasn't very well done, but it was my first project, and I didn't really know what I was talking about with the astrology either yet. Okay. I struck up a friendship with Christopher Warnock, who's astrological magician, and he's kind of the modern person who made it popular. I would say he made it popular. He's been doing this for since the early 2000s. Anyway, I talked to him on the phone for hours, and I realized that there was like a break in the tradition. I didn't know that at the time, and that kind of led me down the whole astrology rabbit hole. So I basically really started studying astrology with like traditional astrology with William Lilly, 17th century, and that's what. And I was just saying that as I was translating Picatrix, and then when I found out Christopher Warnock and John Michael Greer were doing theirs, I was just like, I'm going to not touch it anymore. And after a couple of years, I decided on a whim to try 3 books because I wanted to read another copy of it. Basically, that was my motivation. Because the Tyson / JF editions is hard to read.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
because almost no one reads it all the way through because it's kind of a slog,
Yeah, I know.
So I wanted to get into it. Also, it was due, and I mean everything that I do is based on what I want as a consumer, and I wanted a new version of it,
Yeah.
so
No,
I did it myself because no one else was doing it.
That's a great way to put it. That's awesome. You pretty much answered like almost the next 2 questions. The one I had, what was the
All
moment?
the questions were done.
Yeah. The next one I had was, what was the moment when you realized Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy needed a true translation? You pretty much answered that one.
Yeah.
And I guess if there's anything else, what were the biggest problems with those translations, you think? I mean, I think you already kind of answered it, but if there's anything
well,
else.
there was only one translation.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, which some people don't realize. I'm saying not to magisplain you, but I mean some people don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only translation really was the 1651 JF, and there was arguments on who JF was. It's not 100% clear, but anyway. Yeah, it's a little strange because the biggest issue is the astrology that I found. And there's just like garden variety misprints everywhere or typos everywhere. Some of the graphics are flipped around. Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite ones was that was like non-astrologicals. They talked about the book of Pluto. And Tyson didn't really notice it. And I looked at the original. The original says Book of Plato, and the reason why it said that though I think was because if you look at the original Agrippa's source, it was like because a lot of Agrippa's sources are available on like Google Books and stuff. If you look at the original, like the edition he would have had access to, there was like a little tiny printer's glitch there, so it's easy to get that kind of thing wrong. But yeah, so Tyson in 1983, I think it was, took that 1651 translation, modernized the English or the spellings, added paragraphs when necessary, broke up some of the sentences because some of the sentences were huge, and then annotated it. But the issue, there were several issues. One was Tyson didn't read Latin.
Oh.
And at least as far as I know, he didn't read Latin. He did have editions available to him. I think he even mentioned it in the introduction. In 1991, the critical edition was published. So he may or may not have been aware of that when he was working on it. If he wasn't aware, I wouldn't blame him, honestly, because it was pretty soon, pretty close. If people don't know what a critical edition is, it's where you take every known copy of a manuscript or a book and compare them.
Oh, wow.
And then they usually a scholar will like make an idealized version, but they'll note every single variation.
Nice.
Which with 3 books, it's kind of interesting because it's printed. It was always printed. There was never like a manuscript except for the initial draft when he was in his 20s, which we could talk about that if you want. And but for 3 books of occult philosophy proper, it was always printed. So you would think there would be more consistency, but let me tell you, there isn't. Because it was all hand typeset and all that. So there were a lot of variations. Anyway, so Vittorio Campagni took every edition of 3 books of occult philosophy and just like made an idealized version, noted every single variation. That's what I used to translate it. So Tyson, it was published when Tyson was working on it, but he may not have been aware of it. But the astrology back then was in a different place than it is today. So maybe some people may not know that. But so the history of astrology and occultism are actually pretty parallel in a lot of ways. So both magic and astrology had a major break in the 17th century or early 18th century, in breaking the traditions. And it was kind of dormant for a little while. I wouldn't say dormant, but it was, I would say, not on the forefront for a while. There was work in the 1700s, but not as much. And then when basically because of theosophy, there was a new explosion in the study of magic and astrology. The problem with that new explosion was a lot of source texts weren't available anymore. A lot of times people couldn't read the source texts, and people were trying to fit magic and astrology into this like modern paradigm. All these were happening at the same time. So that's where in the magic world, that's where you start getting the psychological model of occultism, but also in astrology. And there's that's also when the kind of myth that, like, you know, Indian astrology is more predictive than Western astrology. The truth is that both were predictive until the 17th century. In India, they just kept going, and we kind of stopped and decided to become like scientific about it with psychology. So a lot of like techniques, terminology, concepts just went away, were forgotten. And so Tyson, by the time Tyson came on the scene, not only was it not available to Tyson, but even astrologers didn't even know about it at the time. A lot of these things, in the, I know I'm kind of rambling, but the state of the world in the 90s. So basically, in the 90s, in astrology, pretty much all astrologers believe that yes, astrology is really old, and apart from things like outer planets and psychology and things like that, astrology was basically done the same way. And occultists didn't like astrology because astrology was too woo woo, and then magic was too spooky for a lot of astrologers. And so the two things were just completely separated. And in the early 90s, a group of astrologers, 3 astrologers, all named Robert.
Oh, wow.
First name was Robert, all 3 of them. Robert Hand, Robert Zoller, and Robert Schmidt started a translation project. So Robert Schmidt translated Greek, Robert Zoller translated Latin kind of poorly, and then Robert Hand also did some Latin and did the editing. And Robert Hand, if some people don't know who he is, he's just an amazing astrologer, and he's been around forever. He's kind of retired now. And anyway, so they started translating a lot of Greek text and Latin text. And when the first books came out, no one knew what they were reading. That's how different it was. Like, people did not understand it. Complete concepts didn't make sense at all. That we started realizing things like, signs aren't really signs, like the way we think of them. Aspects were not the same. Houses were different. Everything was different. Then there were a lot of predictive methods which just didn't exist. And Robert Hand was aware of a lot of parallels with Indian astrology. Oh. So they aren't the same, but there's a lot of parallels. And anyway, but Tyson wouldn't have known any of this because not even a lot of astrologers knew about it. And so if he was trying to look up sources, they just wouldn't have been available yet. Gotcha. Or at least he could not have been aware of them yet. They were technically available, but so there's a lot of things like JF, when he translated 3 books, he just got a lot of words wrong, especially with astrology. And then Tyson had no way of knowing. And so he did a lot of weird footnotes, glossed over certain concepts that were just blatantly incorrect. Some of the footnotes just really lead people into the wrong direction. And so with me studying astrology, traditional astrology, I was reading this and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a mess. So we had to start over. So, I mean, the Tyson edition, it's what he did was not easy. He had to do this all sort of by hand without the internet. Yeah. But lots changed in 40 years.
Oh yeah.
So, it's
How
time.
much?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, how much damage do you think the mistranslation and those misinterpretation has caused within how we view it today?
I don't really know if it's particularly three books of occult philosophy per se. I think that with a lot of translations coming out over the last couple decades, we're now starting to reconstruct, we're starting to reconstruct a new narrative, both with magic and astrology. So I don't really think that necessarily the Tyson / JF editions cause damage, but there are misunderstandings in it for sure. But I mean, like, there's a lot going on. I mean, you have like, Stephen Skinner publishing all of his translations, and people like that. And I think that in the astrology world, I think we're further along with these reconstruction projects than the occult world is. It's happening. It is happening, but astrology is. I mean, with astrology now, we have we can make a pretty close to a full like family tree, and we even know who created certain concepts and things like that. But damage, I just think that the narratives were off over the centuries. I mean, the Theosophists said they caused the most damage.
I've heard people say that about the.
Blavatsky caused more damage than Tyson. That's for sure.
I've heard Theosophy has. Yeah, I've heard people say that it's damaged like the occult actually more than it probably helped. That's interesting. Judith, is there anything else you wanted to ask before I ask another question?
I will ramble. I'm sorry.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
No, my question is, okay, because recently we had the traditional astrology that everybody has been following for decades. And in the last, I think, 10 years, there's another form. So which one of these two forms are closer to what I don't want to say truth, but is more pure to the astrology, following astrology? It's like there's the ones where we follow, where there's the signs that we traditionally follows, and there's a secondary one which was which I have become familiar with, which actually changes basically where the sign sits and everything else. Which one of these two philosophies, I wish I could remember the terms for each one.
Sidereal.
Yes.
Sidereal.
Is that more true? Is that more true to the form, or is it what we previously used to follow?
Okay, so this is going to be a longer answer.
That's
so
great,
okay, so just in case, just so, because some people may not understand the astronomy behind it, because I always assume some people don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so when the Earth rotates, there is a wobble that like when you spin a top, there's a little wobble on the top of the top that happens. So that's happening with the Earth as well, except it's very, very slow. And the visual effect from our perspective is that the stars are going backwards gradually. Roughly, my math right now, because I'm in front of people, basically it takes around 2,000 years, or a little bit less than that, for it to go a full sign. There's a few issues with all of this. There's really no question that sidereal star placements were the original system. Like pretty much everybody agrees with that. Where it gets complicated is that the stars and the signs are not the same. The constellations and the signs are not the same thing, and they basically never have been. And the reason being is that if you look at the constellations, which they did, you will see that the constellations are different sizes. Some are really, really big. Some are really, really small, and some overlap. and which so they don't really, there's no standardization really that is possible. And so what the signs are 30-degree divisions of the ecliptic. And the ecliptic is the path that the sun travels on in the sky. And all of the signs / constellations of signs are named after are all on or touch the ecliptic. And so what somebody did a long time ago is they standardized this into 30-degree divisions.
Yeah.
And so yes, way back when, these divisions were closer to the constellations, but it's not possible. In Indian astrology, Western astrology, any astrology, it's not possible for it to completely match up. It can never be possible because like Scorpio is very tiny, for instance, and Libras are really, really large. Libra, I think, is like 45 degrees wide or something like that. So it's not going to be easy. The whole thing with Ophiuchus is a dumb argument. The 13th sign, because the logic of the signs or the constellations that they used was they chose not only constellations that touch the ecliptic, but ones that were below the ecliptic. Because the horizon is kind of the main thing that you pay attention to with astrology. So it's always like the ecliptic and also just below it. And Ophiuchus does touch the ecliptic, but it goes up. So that's kind of the difference. So Ophiuchus was known about, but there was never a sign. Also, 12 is a better number than 13. It just is. I don't have to explain it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But anyway, but the tropical. So the difference between tropical and sidereal is based that's based on taking a particular star and saying this is the star that is rising during the spring equinox. And the dirty truth about sidereal astrology is there's a bazillion systems. There isn't one system. In India, they're called Ayanamshas, and I can't remember how many there are. There's several of them, and it's because there's if you look at the sky is really, really messy. It's not as easy as you would think to determine what star should be rising, because it's like because as you know, there's like a bunch of stars. So there's arguments about which star it is. And so that's just, but sidereal is basically taking a star that's going to be the spring equinox, and because of the wobble in the Earth's rotation, it goes backwards. So now the spring equinox happens somewhere sidereally in Pisces. With tropical, that was created by the ancient Greeks. So it goes back. Ptolemy talks about it. I don't know if he invented it. I don't think he invented it. But the tropical is based on the seasons.
Okay.
So like it depends on what bothers you the most. So if you really feel like that a sign has to be based on a star, and that really is the main thing to you, even though they don't match anyway, they never have matched. But I think it's a valid way to look at it. But if that bothers you the most, then that's more correct. But if seasonal consistency is correct for you, then you should use tropical. Western typically uses tropical. But even in Western astrology, they use sidereal placements for stars. They've always done that. So like when like in astrological magic, you do fixed star magic with fixed stars. Those are sidereal placements.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. It's more than you bargained for.
No, that was great. You got anything else, Judith, you want to ask before I ask him something?
Not for now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. One thing I did want to ask, when you went back to the original Latin text, were there any passages that surprised you or kind of changed how you understood Agrippa before?
Yeah, I think that I think translating it made me get a lot closer to it. And I really liked how he weaved together passages from Ficino and other writers, sometimes writers who disagreed with each other, and Agrippa. And Agrippa used those passages to make his own arguments. And but Agrippa is extremely organized. I think that's that might be one of the things that surprised me, is that people tend to look, they use the chapter headings in 3 books as like an encyclopedia, but that's not the way it's written at all. It's meant to be. It's a continuous narrative. The chapters that have the chapter headings that people go to are the places in the book where those concepts are introduced. But they're fleshed out throughout the entire book. So you're going to miss a lot just by reading isolated chapters. So I think what surprised me was the depth of how he fleshed this worldview out. I'd never read anything quite like that before. Yeah, I mean, it's just the consistency. He starts the book out talking about the elements, but really, the entire book talks about the elements in a myriad of different ways. So he'll talk about diamonds and things like that later on, but it actually ties in with the elements as well. So it's like, if you are going to look for the section that talks about, or a section that talks about diamonds, you're just going to go through the index and find every time he mentions it. Without reading the section on elements, then you're only going to get part of the story, and vice versa. Because the elements are not just about elements like the way we think of elements today. It's much more complex than the way we see it today. So reading this fleshed out that way was just, and it was a huge eye opener to me. Something I intellectually knew, but actually reading and experiencing it was a big eye opener for me.
One thing I did want to ask before we keep going, just for some people, some of the listeners that might be new, may not know too much about the occult or hermeticism or whatever. For them, who do you think exactly was Agrippa, and what kind of life do you think he lived?
Yeah, he was in some ways like a sort of a typical scholar of the time, which means he was all sorts of things, a doctor and astrologer and all that. We have an overly specialized way of looking at the world today, and where people are basically defined by a role. And back then, in order to be a doctor, for instance, or to be an astrologer or anybody like that meant you had to be educated. And if you're educated, then you're educated in the quadrivium and the trivium, the 7 liberal arts.
Yeah.
And so he was well read, and so he knew a lot of stuff. And so
you're pretty much like a polymath, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of like people go to college today, you can really go full into that academic world, or you can get a business degree and start up a corrupt business. Yeah. But and which doesn't really mean you're going to be a polymath necessarily.
Yes.
But so I think that's always been kind of true. But Agrippa was one of those people who he was a knowledge fiend. He was he's a huge nerd. I mean, I've heard a story about he used to like to try to talk to people in Latin. His father taught him some kind of astrology. We don't have details. So he did astrology for sure. And if nothing else, it was, medicine, because that would have been something you would have done. He did lectures in the Poemandries, which is the first book of the Corpus Hermeticum. He did lectures on Johannes Reuchlin, who was kind of like the Christian Kabbalist of the time. He did some lectures on Plato. And he also wrote, kind of proto-feminist works. I mean, is by Renaissance standards, pretty groundbreaking. By 21st century standards, pretty backwards. But he tried. He got in trouble for that. His famous book, besides 3 books of occult philosophy, was on the vanity of the arts and sciences, which was, basically his attempt at showing how human knowledge is flawed. And the only true knowledge is God. And so he just went through and systematically ripped apart every area of human knowledge that he could think of. And a lot of those chapters, especially when he talks about magic, those were excerpted in the JF version of 3 books of occult philosophy. So the parts where people say that he was like anti-Goetia and all that, it was because that's where that came from. It's from that book. Lynn Thorndike, who wrote the history of magic and experimental science in the 20s, said that if Agrippa had never written 3 books of occult philosophy, he would have been known as a great Renaissance humanist scholar. He was very prolific, wrote hundreds of letters, wrote analyses on the Bible and Plato and all sorts of things. And 3 books was sort of like his life's work. So that kind of united everything together. That's where he started, and that's where he ended.
You know what I just remembered now? I mean, I could be wrong. Isn't there some controversy over a 4th book that supposedly is either his or not? Am I correct? Yeah, right.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, and I was thinking of doing it originally, of translating it, and I lost faith in the book as I was going through it, and also the one by actually I think Tyson, I did do that one. That's translated by Turner, and that one I think is actually decent. I didn't really see anything glaring in there. It wasn't worth the time me doing it, I didn't think. But so what the 4th book is, this came from Agrippa's Omnia Opera, those complete works, and mostly the 2nd volume. And seeing a physical copy, actually, I talked to Justin Sledge one time. He showed it, when he did my interview. He showed me on video the copies of the book, because I'd never seen a physical copy of them. But one of the things they used to do back in the day is they would bulk up the size of the books to basically it was just better because that way you could put more books in there. It was kind of like, but in the case of Agrippa's Opera Omnia, there were 2 pretty fat volumes, and if they didn't do this, it would have been a fat volume with a small volume. So they added a bunch of other text to it. Pretty common practice back then, and so there's this one little thing in there called the 4th book of occult philosophy. It's like a little tiny text, which he almost certainly did not write. His student, Johannes Weyer, said that he didn't write it. It doesn't really fit in with anything Agrippa would have done. It doesn't cosmologically fit with Agrippa very well. But then if you look at the rest of the 4th book, there's just a bunch of other stuff in there. And the reason why there's a bunch of other stuff in there is because that's in his complete works volume. And I thought that it was just like a volume that was published like that at one point, and then when I actually saw how it was laid out, I realized that Turner, who did the translation, was just kind of like he took the 4th book and a few books that came after, or text that came after that, and then he just put in random other stuff. So it's not really a contiguous book. So I just kind of lost interest in it. I'm not saying don't buy it. I think you should buy it. And there's good stuff in there. I lost interest in trying to do a new version of it, though.
I understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think he wrote it. The geomancy one, I kind of questioned slightly, but maybe he did, but I don't really feel strongly that he should have.
Gotcha. Judith, did you have anything that you wanted to ask before I keep going?
No, I do have a question. So there's question, basically the question is basically if the fourth book is genuine to either his thoughts or his incomplete thoughts.
I don't think it is. I mean, which isn't a problem for me, honestly. Someone asked me years and years ago if the fourth book is a real book. I'm like, yes, it's a real book.
Yeah, you're funny.
Because I'm a smart ass.
Well, it has been published, right? So I mean, I guess
it
it
has
is
been published. But it isn't Agrippa's. That doesn't really bother me though.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, I understand that totally.
I mean, how many books were actually written by Hermes? You know, there's a famous astrology book in Latin. It was in Latin. It's an Arabic book originally. That's called the Book of Aristotle. Aristotle didn't write it. We now know who it was, but it wasn't Aristotle. You know, these things happen all the time. So,
who was that by? Because I'm trying to think of
the Book of Aristotle.
Yeah.
Mashallah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think that's even being questioned now, but
for some reason I thought there was another work that was kind of given to Aristotle.
There's a lot of those. I mean, there's a Secretum Secretorum. That's the famous one. That's supposed to be the instructions by Aristotle to his student Alexander the Great. That's a famous one. If you get a complete works of Aristotle, there's a few in there that are questioned. It's kind of like the Gospels. There's some that are pretty good, but they're good anyway. But they just don't think, it's not Aristotle.
Gotcha.
Probably. It's Aristotelian. I didn't even realize how late Aristotle came into the scene, really, as far as being widely read, because he was basically forgotten for quite a while. And he was rediscovered by a soldier in the 1st century BC or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Rediscovered. I mean, so, that's big quotes there, but there was really nothing in Hellenistic literature until then with Aristotle, which I didn't realize that until recently.
All right. I did want to go into a little bit, have a question or two on kind of the structure of the book for people to get an idea.
Yes.
Agrippa divides magic into 3 worlds: natural, celestial, and divine. Can you kind of explain what that means to you?
Yes. So these divisions are, they kind of merge into each other. So the natural world is going to be, that's pretty obvious. It's what you see. So everything you can see and touch and feel is the natural world. And that's going to be the basis of what you're actually physically going to be working with and obviously where you're living. As you start moving up, it starts to get more abstract. So the celestial world is a combination of things that are concrete, like planets and stars. That's obvious. Those actually exist. If we had long enough arms, we could touch them. And but it also includes numbers and letters. And where it starts to get a little bit more abstract is that you start in book 1. They start talking about the forms, the Platonic forms, and numbers are considered to be of the realm of the forms.
Yeah,
and then letters share a little bit of that as well, because they're, according to Agrippa, are numerical. They're constructed through numerical means, and also celestial means. He believed that Hebrew was a combination of mathematical ratios and imitating the celestials. And in Agrippa's world, Hebrew is going to be the most ancient language. So letters are going to have that sort of interplay as well, which is why we use numbers and letters, why we write them out, because then you're taking these sort of abstract things and making them physical. And then, of course, astrology. So astrology is a combination of physical and non-physical. So like the signs are non-physical, but the constellations are physical. Like we were talking about constellations versus signs. So the signs are live in the realm of the forms. So you can't see the signs. And plus a lot of astrological concepts are abstract. And then you go to the celestial world that starts to move up into, obviously it's going to be not celestial but divine world. So it's obviously going to be God and pretty much all like angels, daimons. I'm not going to say demon because daimon is a bigger concept. And then also that's where he starts to talk about ceremonies and prayer and things like that as well, because prayer is you're uniting the divine and the physical world as well. So a lot of these things kind of come down to what Ficino called the chain of being, or the golden chain. So it's like you have everything has like a hierarchy, and so in the natural world, the lowest is going to be probably a rock or something like that. We're among the highest because we're people and we write these books. And then you have all these things in between. And but then like in the spiritual world, it also works the same way because diamonds are considered to be the lowest of the chain. And then they eventually will connect with, intelligences and all these kinds of things. And our own soul, or our own spiritual world, is divided into three, and those three parts interplay with, the spiritual world as well. So that's kind of the point of doing the magic, is to sort of like understand these connecting chains in the natural world, celestial, and the divine world, and how our spirits also connect with those three worlds as well, and ourselves, so that we can ascend and have a better time.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you very much for that. Mm-hmm. Judith, did you have anything else before?
Not right now.
Why do you think Agrippa was so focused on correspondences between planets, herbs, stones, numbers, and angels? I mean, I know you kind of mentioned it just now, but like, you think there's anything else?
Well, I mean, this goes back to, I think, I don't want to say every kind of magic, because I think I don't like saying that. But certainly most kinds of magic I can think of have correspondences to them. And it just goes back to the very beginning, because I mean, if you go back to astrological literature, even the astrological literature Agrippa would not have known about, they spent a lot of time on these correspondences. And it's because there's actually, I think the analogy that Agrippa uses, that he didn't invent, but it's close to it's in the forefront of my brain, is that it's like when you pluck a guitar string, or a kithra, a guitar string, the vibrations from that string will cause another string to vibrate. And that's kind of what you're doing with magic, is you're taking these things that have like this resonance to each other, and that's their kind of like, I think that's part of this causality, is that if you're, I don't like to use the word vibration because it's overused in New Age, but it's kind of what you're doing, is you're plucking the string, so to speak, in the way that you're able to physically do it, i.e. ceremony, plants, stones, animals, whatever the case may be, and that's causing the resonant frequencies to then affect something that's above it. I don't mean this literally, because I hesitate to use vibration and resonant frequencies and things like that because it's overused. But it's an analogy that's kind of in the forefront, because I've been reading some Greek astrological literature, and they actually literally say that about the moon, how the moon is that the planets, as they move, create a tension, and then the moon plucks the string. That's how we get our influences. And that's, I think, Ptolemy, if I'm not mistaken, said that.
Thank you. The way you were just saying now, I guess kind of like how something like would influence like the vibrating string, would influence the other one.
Right.
I was doing something, and this was kind of like a little bit where I was wondering, even with, I guess, why he covered herbs. I have a series that I've been working on now where I'm covering the herbs and kind of like how they are also used in witchcraft and magic or ceremonial magic. But then after that, I'm covering how it actually affects your 12 cranial nerves, if it does. And a lot of them, through science now, like you'll see like how it. So you'd be surprised what some of these things will actually do to like 2 or 3 of your cranial nerves, or what it will do to your vagus nerve. And
Have you ever tried LSD?
no, well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Do you ever smoke a joint? You know what I'm saying? Like, but like I do wonder if like somehow, this may sound crazy, if they understood a little bit of that back then and understood maybe even these herbs in the oil or in the burned form might have helped put you into like a state to get you going.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there was something like that, for sure. Ficino's 3 books on life. One of the things that makes that book really interesting is it's essentially like a love letter to Saturn. That's what my partner calls it. And
great with Saturn. I love his work on Saturn.
Yeah, and there's a lot of medicine in there about how to work with, how to deal with melancholia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, they definitely knew this. And I was in some of the incense recipes in Picatrix, cannabis is an ingredient, and so is opium, which are also Saturnine. But yeah, so I mean, there were, I mean, sure, I mean, that's how coffee was discovered,
I mean, I guess if you even think about it, who was it, Tycho Brahe? If you live to look at him, I mean, he was using it medicinally. So, like, at least back then,
everybody was.
Yeah, they even understood you could use it for at least that.
Well, that's what I mean. That traditional alchemy is medicine, and I don't really buy the whole like, oh, it's a spiritual evolution. I don't really buy that. It's medicine.
Yeah.
And there's I don't know if anybody. I'll plug him if people don't know him. Robert Bartlett, who's an amazing alchemist, and does classes. And but he somebody asked him if he ever tried any of these alchemical substances on animals, and he was like, well, yeah. He goes, that's what made me a believer, because there's no confirmation bias with an animal. And so he said that he had an experience where he had a horse that had an abscess, and he called the vet like 2 or 3 times. The vet kept trying to do things, nothing was helping. It kept getting worse, and so on a like kind of last ditch effort, I think he made an oil of, I want to say it was antimony, but I might be, or antimony. Is it antimony or antimony? He made an oil of that. I think it was that, and just dripped it into the wound. And he goes, within a couple of days, it was gone.
Oh wow.
So I mean, these things, ancient people, they weren't dummies, and I mean, this whole thing with like lifespans and stuff. I mean, sure, the lifespan's going to be a little bit less, but people didn't. I mean, the 50s was not the lifespan. It was, if you made it past puberty, you were more than likely going to live into your 70s, unless there was a war or a plague or something. But generally speaking, people lived in their 70s. If you survived into puberty, because that's when all the danger. That's the dangerous time, is childhood.
Yeah.
And so it's like, people weren't miserable. I mean, people were people and were smart.
I feel like back then, if you made it out of your teens, you had a shot.
Yeah. It's if you read some of the astrological literature, I mean, they talk about average lifespans being, actually, they talk about dividing a life into thirds a lot, of 25 years. So that would be 75 years. So there was an expectation you're going to live pretty close to that time.
I do have a quick question, because you compared cannabis and LSD with the planet Saturn, which,
not LSD.
if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. But cannabis.
I'm sorry. Cannabis
no,
with Saturn, but to my understanding, unless I'm viewing this wrong, Saturn is supposed to be restrictive.
That's a thing, sure. That's like a one word description, but like Saturn's also like, I guess, how do I say this? It's sort of the planet that would describe the melancholic humor the most. So depression. So things that deal with like sleepiness and depressants, I guess. Yeah, would be Saturnine. But also keep in mind, I mean, you know, all these astrological correspondences are done by people trying to describe planetary nature. And so there's a lot of disagreements, and the disagreements I don't think are really that serious, but you're going to see like, you're going to see contradictions, and you're going to see also one thing being ruled by more than one planet. I think a really good example is sandalwood, because sandalwood is ruled by both Venus and Mars, but for different reasons.
Okay.
So
It's one of my favorites, actually.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
I'll be now, and in full disclosure, the thing with cannabis and Saturn, that is kind of that's an Ericism. I mean, I don't think that really isn't in any ancient books or anything like that. So this is kind of me using my own logic, which is all we have is our own logics. But I do know that it is mentioned in at least the Arabic Picatrix. As an instance, and not just for Saturn, but also they have they call them confections for things like sleep, and that was one of the ingredients. So it was known.
That could definitely help to sleep.
Yeah,
There's a lot of poisonous ingredients in these. Yeah, it would help. It does help some people sleep.
Yes, indeed.
Opium too, I hear, but I've never tried it. So,
well,
LSD not so much. That's why I said no, not LSD. LSD is not going to help you sleep.
No, not for a long time. Now I wanted to, if you guys have like maybe 2 or 3 questions on influences. Agrippa draws heavily from ancient philosophers. How much of his system you think comes from Plato and Iamblichus?
Quite a bit, but not directly.
Okay. Do you want to explain it, please?
Yeah. At the time he was writing, he would have only had, to my knowledge, access to Ficino's translations of Plato and Iamblichus. And Corpus Hermeticum, for that matter. That's not strictly true because there was another one, another translation. But yeah, Plato and Iamblichus would have been Ficino, and a lot of the quotes from Plato come from Ficino, one of Ficino's books called The Platonic Theology, which I heavily recommend people read. It's in print and translated.
Oh.
I recommend people reading 3 Books on Life and Platonic Theology. And if Ficino is, to me, it's just a joy to read. He has a very nice, fluid way of writing. I really love him. Iamblichus also would have been probably Ficino's translation. He almost certainly had a copy of Ficino's complete works. But I think that there were a lot of misunderstandings with how Iamblichus was understood during the Renaissance.
So Ficino did Iamblichus, Plato, and Plotinus, correct?
I don't think he did Plotinus, but he might have, but I don't think he did. Did he do Enneads?
I think possibly. That's why I'm almost.
I have to look it up. I don't remember now, but I know he did Proclus. That's the other P.
Yeah. You think between him and the Medici family, it basically caused the Renaissance?
Yeah. Yeah. His translation of the Corpus Hermeticum is like famously terrible. Yeah, there's a little known writer named Ludovico Lazzarelli, who was a rough contemporary of Agrippa, and he was the earliest person I'm aware of who called himself a Hermeticist, because basically Hermeticism didn't exist really before that.
So somebody called
And
himself.
yeah, he was like the first one to call himself that. But he wrote an interesting book called The Crater of Hermes, which I think has been translated. And but he did a really nice translation. That's like the best older translation of Corpus Hermeticum. But he was really trying to he did a very intelligent job of trying to reconcile Hermeticism with Christianity at the time, and kind of created like a whole little system. So it was a kind of very interesting guy. And Agrippa was definitely influenced by him, and quotes him. Iamblichus is an interesting one because the Mysteries of the Egyptians is a response to a bunch of letters, and there's a passage in Iamblichus that talks about the idea of calculating one's diamonds from the astrological chart, and the names, and not just your personal diamond, but also he also mentions diamond of profession of all things. And but that's quoted endlessly in Renaissance text, but the reality is the Iamblichus did not believe that could be done, because it's a response to his teacher Porphyry, and Porphyry did believe it could be done because he was an astrologer. And Iamblichus is replying, he's like, I don't know why you're saying this. It could only be done through theurgy. Astrology is bullshit. But they all quote him. It's like, what was that? Oh, I thought I heard a question.
You might have like kind of indirectly answered this too. What role do you think Marsilio Ficino played in shaping the magical worldview Agrippa inherited?
Yeah, huge. Yeah, it's a pretty sizable chunk of 3 books is quoted from Ficino. I would say the 2 biggest influences were going to be Ficino and Trithemius. And 3 books is ultimately kind of not ultimately, but in one way, is a response to the way that Ficino and Trithemius looked at the way, like how they defined what good magic was versus bad magic, or I should say good versus evil, not qualitatively bad. But my brain, my ADHD brain here.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Agrippa was basically responding. He disagreed with their definitions of that, but he used their quotes to basically form his opinions, which I think is really an interesting approach. Yeah, I would say that the 3 biggest influences, really, I should say it was 4. There's 4 influences. So you have Ficino, which is one of the biggest. Trithemius, who I think is more, he is quoted a fair amount, but I think he was more of like a personal influence. Franciscus Giorgio, who wrote a book called Harmonia Mundi, which is a little known book today. I thought of translating it, but I don't think anybody wants to read it, to be honest. It's I don't mean that and like, oh, you guys suck. It's a boring book. It's larger than 3 books of occult philosophy. And it's basically kind of a book on Christian Kabbalism. But strangely enough, a lot of Agrippa's work or quotes from astrology come from that book, which I think is very strange. And the other influence is going to be Reuchlin, his 2 books.
Nice.
The On Wonderful Words and the Art of Kabbalah.
So not all these books have been translated to English. They're all in Latin.
Yeah. So Franciscus Giorgio has not been translated. Both of Reuchlin's books have been, and Ficino has been, and Trithemius, I believe, has been. I think there's a couple of letters that Agrippa quotes that haven't been translated, but a lot of his work has been. Yeah, so those are available. Reuchlin is interesting. Ficino's one I really recommend people get by those books, because they're almost like companion pieces to 3 books. But he gets more into the philosophical side even more than Agrippa does. It's really good.
Thank you. One thing I also wanted to ask too is how important do you think Jewish Kabbalah was to Agrippa's system?
Agrippa would say foundational, but it wasn't Jewish Kabbalah.
Okay. All right. How would you think Kabbalah? And what kind of Kabbalah was actually?
His biggest influence was going to be like I mentioned Reuchlin and Franciscus Giorgio, and he taught courses on Reuchlin and did lectures on his works, and I don't think Agrippa would have had the historical what's the word I want to say? The bird's eye historical perception to know that wasn't actually Jewish Kabbalah. I mean, I think he just kind of thought that is what it was. So I would not call it Jewish Kabbalah. I'm not really confident in his knowledge of Hebrew, to be honest with you. That was actually one of the hardest things I had to deal with the book was so one of the consistencies of 3 books is he quotes things word for word, and he's usually very faithful with that. He's very good at that, or very accurate, I should say, except for the Hebrew. But the strange thing is that a lot of times he changes the Hebrew, but it feels consistent still. So I think he understood a little bit, but I don't think it was that deep. But I noticed that in different versions of 3 books, like different editions of it, the Hebrew is changed around a lot, as well as Tyson, as well as JF, and it was a nightmare on my end putting it together. And I was just lucky that the head editor of Intertraditions is Jewish, and so she looked at this and she was okay. There's problems here, and she was, we're able to. Actually, the interesting thing was the Hebrew in the critical edition was wrong, which I was copying, because my knowledge of Kabbalah is fairly weak. So I was copying it out, and she was like, where is this from? And I'm like, oh, it's from the critical edition. She goes, okay, well, it's wrong. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, can you show me Agrippa's original, 1533? So I sent her a, screenshot of it, and she was like, oh, Agrippa's correct. So I don't know. I don't know how to reconcile it. He believes that Judaism is the oldest religion, and Hebrew is the oldest language and the oldest alphabet. And he believes that the language is based on the Celestials. So, and of course, he's a Christian. So he's going to believe this is very foundational. As far as his actual knowledge and depth of knowledge, I cannot testify to. I feel like it's not as foundational as he thinks it was.
You think more of like Christian Kabbalah?
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure that's what you would call it.
Yeah, that was even what Pico della Mirandola was into, right? He was in.
Yeah, that's what they had. That's what they had. I mean, yeah, they weren't going to like actually talk to Jewish people.
I know he would say that.
I mean, that's crazy. Why would they actually talk to the people who have this knowledge that they want? I don't know.
Who would have thought? Judith, did you have any?
And why would these Kabbalistic scholars want to talk to them to begin with?
True. Judith, did you have anything before I ask anymore?
Not right now.
Okay, I just make it.
To absorb.
Yeah. One thing kind of my opinion of looking at stuff. One thing I think, we kind of like the modern readers on how we look at stuff today I think we often miss is that my opinion that Renaissance magic sometimes might have been closely tied to kind of like science. Do you think Agrippa understood that relationship possibly between magic and natural philosophy? That there might have been like an occult science in the background?
Yeah, that's foundational to 3 books. And he says
Okay.
it many times that one has to understand natural philosophy to understand magic. I don't know if I 100% agree with him, but I do agree with his sentiment. Um, there's somewhere in there, and actually Picatrix echoes this. They have lists of things you have to learn to do magic. Picatrix actually has a list. And it has things like, not just math and philosophy, but like warfare and geometry and rhetoric, all these things. There's like a list of things you have to understand. And but I would condense this thing that basically one should be well learned in their culture, I think, to do magic well. Whatever that culture is. I don't think one has to know liberal arts to be a magician. But you have to understand that the definition of science was different. Because we're used to thinking of science as a body of knowledge that's empirical, and they wouldn't necessarily seen it that way, because so the word where science comes from is scientia, which is Latin, means knowledge, and like many words, if you just like translate the word, it doesn't tell you like the context or the connotation of the word sometimes. Scientia back then was a body of knowledge that had principles that one could learn, basically. So it had to be a body of knowledge that had principles. Those are the two main criteria. So to Agrippa, astrology is a science, not because it can be empirically tested, but because there is a consistent logic that goes throughout that, and that logic agrees with other sciences as well. Philosophy is a science as well, because philosophy is a body of knowledge that has principles to it that one can study. And as part of this, Agrippa is quoting things like Pliny the Elder, which has like some pretty, funny material in there. He was like an ancient Roman scientist. I mean, he was trying to like talk about like the science of his time, but he has a lot of things. Like if you want to make it rain, you have to take a chameleon and put it on the roof, dead chameleon, put it on the roof of your house, and it's going to cause it to rain. And Agrippa just repeats this stuff, and also repeat verses from like Virgil as backup for some of his ideas. And this because back then knowledge could come from many different areas. And so natural philosophy is the roots of modern science, but modern science is not the same thing as what Agrippa would have understood it as, to be. It's almost like the fact that something had a philosophical precedent to it was enough for something to be real.
I like that.
And I think about that a lot with astrology, because a lot of astrology is based on that idea, and not from empiricism. It's based on philosophical constructs that fit in with the philosophical construct of astrology, but it's like you can't prove it. You can never prove some of these things. You can't even prove it by reading charts. Some of these things, it works because it should work, and there's a lot in traditional magic that works because it should work. And it does work. Like it can, it definitely can work. I mean, those of us who do a lot of magic have seen a lot of things work. That doesn't work with modern science, but it works because it should work.
When you say modern science and it works because it should work, are you basically saying because it's not we don't have substantial proof?
No,
No,
I don't
how can I
think
say?
I don't think magic or oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, actually, go ahead.
Oh, I don't think a lot of these things are ever going to stand up to scientific proof. And I don't really personally need it to. Um, for example, one of the earliest uh, one of the earliest readings that I did in astrology. Um, I was feeling very cocky back then, and this it was a mother, and she decided to test me on something. Which, if somebody tried to do that to me today, I would tell them to fuck off. Um, but I was trying to prove myself back then, and so she tried. So she said, so she tested me, and she says, "Can you tell me what's wrong with my son?" And so I remember looking at this, and I can't remember exactly everything on there, but I do remember it was Mercury was conjunct the sun, and Mercury ruled the fifth house, which was his children. And Mercury was in like one of his ruling signs. I can't remember which one, Gemini or Virgo, one of the two. But anyway, Mercury was conjunct the sun, so Mercury is actually getting damaged by the sun in traditional astrology, because when it's too close to the sun, it's called combust, so it's getting burned up. And so it's a mixture of like it being in good shape but also getting burned up. And so I just looked at it, I'm like, oh, he has autism. and I said it's very mild though, a very mild form of it. And I don't know what made me say that, but that's what I told her. And she was like, that's what the doctor told me. And I was curious if you saw the same thing. And what I'm saying now is that I don't believe that every single person who has the sun conjunct Mercury, with Mercury being strong and combust, is going to be autistic. I don't believe that. And I don't think I could repeat that in another chart quite so easily. But it worked that time. And there's a lot in divination where that happens, I think, where it works that time really well. And why did that happen? What in science made that happen? You know what I mean? Like, it worked because it should work.
Gotcha.
And because it did work. But I'm not here to prove it. I mean, it's just because you can't. It's not a consistent thing. It doesn't work like that in every single in every single chart. You have to use your wits. Your connection with the divine has to like kick in somewhere.
Makes sense.
Do I see a question that just popped up?
Yeah, I got it down
Yeah.
there. What did Agrippa mean by illumination? Is it just connection to a higher divine mind, or is there something more?
I'm trying to think of the context where he said that. Well, I mean, generally speaking, it's going to be, connection with. Ultimately, it's going to be connection to the higher divine mind. Yes, ultimately. I mean, he goes a lot into what light does, both literally and symbologically. And so basically, when everything is dark, everything looks the same. And when you provide light to something, then you can then make distinctions between things, and you can form opinions and ideas and whatever about what things are, because now you can see them and perceive them. And ultimately, that's what illumination is doing, is that when you are connected to the spirit in general and you're illuminated, then you can actually see things for what they are. And you can make distinctions between things and between what things are and what things are not. But I don't know. I think these is one of those terms that's gotten co-opted by New Age quite a bit, and people are always on this quest for illumination or enlightenment. And it becomes kind of like a what do they call it? It's a trapdoor philosophy, because like if you start talking about if you just start talking about like enlightenment, for instance, it's like enlightenment is something that either you experience or don't experience, and if someone says that enlightenment doesn't exist, it actually proves that it does exist if you believe in it.
Wouldn't
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. When someone say illumination or enlightenment, to me that means truth. Finding the
But what's
ultimate
truth? What is the ultimate truth?
It is per perception. Point taken.
Yeah, I think. I think that it's to Agrippa. I mean, the truth is going to be is just God. I mean, he's a true blue Catholic. That is the truth. Everything else is kind of like a flawed. What's the word I want to use? It's a flawed expression of experience in some way. I don't personally believe that, but it's a very classic kind of a Christian way of looking at things, and Platonic in some ways too. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So for him, ultimately the truth is going to be being united with God somehow, and the purpose of doing a lot of this magic is to help one ascend, help one's spirit ascend through all the different barriers and layers that are in the universe, in order to finally reach the light of God, and that's where you actually see what the real reality is. And that's kind of part of Platonic philosophy in some ways, is that they'll say, what is the word I'm thinking of? What is it? There's something at the tip of my tongue where it's like the Platonic forms are the only things that are considered to be actually real, but they're not physical. Or I think it's a word. I want to say there's a word I'm chasing in my head that's not quite that.
It was a
it has like a what's that?
For some reason, I was thinking the word truth. But
it's not truth. It's something like the word I keep thinking of is material, but it's not material because they're immaterial. Because the lack of materiality gives it a reality that cannot exist in the material world.
It's like sitting in Bina.
It's like which?
Sitting in Bina, the top of the tree of life.
Got it. See, I'm a terrible Kabbalist.
Oh my.
Oh, sitting in Bina. Oh, okay, I got it. Now I get it. You had to see it. You had to see it.
There's no way to
see it in my head.
There's no way to describe it.
Right. It's immaterial.
No literal translation. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah, formless, kind of. We're getting there. One thing I did want to ask you. I had a couple of things with translating, but there was a question I wanted to ask a while ago, and I remembered now. It's a little bit kind of like really. I mean, I guess I could refer it back to the book, but you mentioned daemon before. I'm assuming that's used in his book. What's the difference between demon and daemon to you?
Well, demon is just a later version of the same word.
Okay.
But I made the distinction so that it was easier to widen the definition in your head a little bit, because demon just automatically makes people think of infernal, evil, beings. So daimon is a very complex word that goes very far back. The term, I mean, it's ancient Greek, and if you go really, really, really far back, the meaning gets very mushy. It can mean, they often will translate it as God or a God. But it also could mean other kinds of spirits. And there's also, what's interesting is etymologically, apparently, my Greek is spotty, but apparently there's a etymological link to lots, and the implication being that like that diamonds associated with you are like just given to you by chance, and which I think is really interesting. And but as time goes on, the meaning kind of like changes a bit. I mean, it never really seemed to be used in the same sense that like an Olympian god would have been. They wouldn't have called Zeus a daimon, for instance. But it was definitely like used to be like a personal spirit. There was a famous book by Apuleius, the Middle Platonic writer who wrote the Golden Ass, who I recommend also everybody read. It's an amazing book.
There's a dude on our show who talks about that book all the time.
It's such a fun book to read. It's actually funny.
Yeah, that was
like Arabian Nights vibes. Yeah, but he wrote a book called "The Daimon of Socrates," and it's in English. You can find it. It actually talks about this. It was talking about Socrates's personal spirit, basically, and so like Iamblichus, the late Platonic philosopher, was talking about like about finding the daimon of place, finding the daimon, your personal daimon, daimon of profession. It's because all these areas of life have like the spiritual or a spirit ally to them, and so some are good, some are bad, some are just not for you. I mean, just like there are some good people who are terrible for you. Same thing with diamonds. So Agrippa talks about that a lot. And so the JF and the Tyson editions almost always translate daimon as spirit. But the problem is that he also uses the word spirit separately, like spiritus. So you have spiritus, you have daimon. So I had to make the distinction. And daimon is not inherently bad, not inherently good. There are good ones, there are bad ones. In the famous section where he has the sigils, the planetary sigils, he does say that the daimon of the planet is used for evil, which isn't necessarily consistent with the rest of the book. He talks about how to find your daimon through your birth chart, which is a service I perform, by the way. And it's one of my readings, and also the name of the daimon through your birth chart. So he talks about that. The method I do is directly from Agrippa. And the idea is that you're like learning how to work with the spirit. Like your good daimon is the spirit that is there to bring good. Now, in this worldview, good and evil are not subjective. These are concrete terms. I call them conventional goods and conventional evils. I don't think I made that up. I think I got that from somewhere. I just can't remember who. But a conventional good are going to be things that, for life in general, human life in general, in our case, things that are good to foster human life. So things like children, being recognized for your efforts, having, romantic partners, having friends, having a good home, all this kind of stuff. These are conventional goods because it kind of helps us develop. Even if you don't want children, we have to agree that children are necessary for humans to exist. That's why I say they're not subjective. Conventional evils are going to be things like death, disease, loneliness, that kind of thing. And so you want to work with a good daimon to, develop the things that are going to foster good things for you. People don't typically work with the evil daimon for obvious reasons, but in astrology, it's actually tied to certain concepts in astrology. And the evil daimon is tied to things that are just destructive to you. You can actually identify that in an astrology chart and talk about it. So I think it's useful to know that as well. It's kind of like I don't know, like I'm just gonna make an example. Like a lot of people could drink wine or alcohol and have a drink or two and it's fine, but you cannot.
should not
You
drink.
know, it's bad for you. You know, not
You're
you.
allergic.
The proverbial you.
No, I know.
You know, some people.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, there are some people where it's bad. So I look at that with the diamonds. It's like the evil diamond. There's like just certain things that are just kind of like for you could be, you know, problematic.
Yes. See, now that's. I'm glad you're saying that now, because this is kind of leading into something I was going to ask you. Do you think, like, when it comes to, I mean, I guess you're saying daemon and demon is the same thing. Do you think they could just be like, one's just a negative aspect of someone's self? Like,
Well, that's psychology.
Could a negative daemon be just like your ego out of control?
I mean, modern astrology would say that, and you know, maybe some modern magicians would say that, but I try to. I'm not a therapist.
Okay.
I'm a magician and an astrologer.
Yeah.
So I stay out of the psychological realm. I think that I don't know. I think it's one of the benefits of cutting my teeth on African spirituality or African religion. I shouldn't call it spirituality. It's a full-on religion. It's terrible of me to say that, but seeing things that are objectively spiritual that are not me at a very young age hit me pretty hard. And so I think like magic and modern magic and astrology is basically neutered itself into taking this objective reality that's not you out of the equation. It's not all about you. Yeah, even the most basic way to look at it, like an astrology chart, for instance, has changed. In modern astrology, the birth chart is you. The entire chart is you. In pre-modern and traditional astrology, I should say, the birth chart is your place in the universe, which is different because it's like, you know, you have friends, you have lovers, you have jobs, you have all these children, you have all these people in your life, but you are not them. They have their own thing going on. You know, that job that you had, that you quit, still exists somewhere, you know, without you. And that person that you broke up with 15 years ago still exists somewhere with someone else. They've moved on. And the astrology should be able to show these things. You know, these are the people in your life. These are the things in your life. But it isn't all you. And it isn't all about your experience with it. It's like your experience changes. So, I don't know. So diamond being an aspect of you, kind of, because you're experiencing it, but I wouldn't say it is you.
All right. I like that.
I've done enough ancestral worship. I've been doing ancestral worship for 35 years. And there's a lot going on though. That's not me. I mean, I've had spirits tell me things I have not told anybody.
Oh, I'm sure.
Anybody else? And recently this happened to me.
Oh, really?
This just happened to me recently. Yeah, there was a thing I was supposed to be doing with one of my Orishas that I've been procrastinating. My friend who just got initiated, his teacher came and wanted to do a seance. We do a lot of seances. We don't call them seances. That's what I'm going to say because it's the word people are going to know. And but anyway, so she doesn't know anything about me. And he doesn't know anything about my Orishas, but he knows that I'm initiated, but he doesn't really know all the Orishas I have and all this kind of stuff. And so like we're doing the whole seance. So it was towards the very end. She just goes, "Oh, by the way, do you have this Orisha?" I'm like, "Yeah," which not everybody has. And she's like, "Wait a minute, you haven't done this, have you?" And I'm like, "No." It's very specific, and I'm like, I got tattled on. Like no one knew this.
Nice.
I procrastinated. I fixed it though. But no, this thing is these things exist outside of you, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless you think your cat is a part of your subconscious, I don't know. But
that's my familiar. No.
What part of your psyche?
Yeah, it's my alter ego, actually. What Which translating the text, what were some of the hardest parts of translating Agrippa's Latin for you?
I think the hardest part is the same thing with Picatrix is the names of the stones, plants, and animals. That is by far the hardest part. And there are certain ones that I don't think anybody knows.
Gotcha.
I actually want to revisit some. I've thought about. I mean, it's sort of like I don't know. No one's. I mean, people famously aren't happy with their own creations, and I'm not happy with my translation in some ways. I'd love to redo it somewhat, and sometimes I'm not going to. But I've now learned of a couple of things out there that might be useful. But when I did it, like there were some sections of like Pliny the Elder that he translated or that he copied, and there were some plants there that I don't think anybody knows. And I discovered there might be some more recent translations. I may have some of that, but things like that happen. But it was actually kind of illuminating because I found a few things that were unexpected. Like my favorite one was the incense for the fixed stars incenses. And usually it's just one little thing, like, frankincense for this star, myrrh for that star. And there was one that in Latin, it was for Regulus, I believe. The Latin was Carabe. Or Carabe, that's what it was, Carabe. It ended with an E. And everybody translated that as Carib. And that's initially what I did too. I'm like, oh, it's Carib. Sure, why not? Carabe, Carib. And but it stuck in my brain. I'm like, okay, well, Carib is a weird ingredient for incense. And anyway, so like I started digging into it, and I found out that there was one guy, who I'm not going to name, in an alchemy site had it translated as asphaltum, which is basically tar. And so I messaged him. I'm like, where'd you get this from? And he goes, oh, I got it from a 19th century apothecary book. And I'm like, what's the book? So he goes, oh, here's the link. It was on Google Books. I looked it up, and sure enough, that's what they said. And I'm like, well, here, where'd they get that from? And so I dug and dug and dug, and then I found out that Carabe was like a little used local word in Eastern Spain, Western France for amber.
Oh.
And so that made more sense to me.
Oh, that would be.
So little things like that pop up.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating because there's like stones, like the Pliny mentions, that are supposed to summon gods, but no one knows what the stone is. It's like a name, and and I don't know. People have said that about Agrippa, like, well, maybe Agrippa knew. I'm like, no, Agrippa didn't know. He just copied it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have Latin dictionaries back then.
That's the issue with translations. So sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's all over the place. And the JF translation did a lot of really strange things. Like there was there were a lot of stones that he liked to translate as jet that weren't. Like one of them was supposed to be a ruby, and he translated it as jet. So there's a lot of so the Tyson / JF translation does have some like really strange mistranslations for things. So yeah, so that's I think that's the thing, is that version of Agrippa is used as source books a lot for different things. So yeah, there's some of the, especially incense recipes, it's wrong, and yeah, like Carib, another common one was
Carib chips.
The stone for. Is this Regulus again? Am I stuck on Regulus? I know the stone's Regulus. I might be stuck on Regulus on the brain. But the stone that everybody translated that was granite. And I found out that the word was one letter off from garnet, because the granite and garnet in English, how they're really close. It's the same in Latin.
Yeah.
It's like granitum versus vernitum. It's like a different ending. It's so it's supposed to be garnet.
Nice.
So yeah, so things like that pop up a lot, but yeah, everybody says granite for that. It's not correct.
One more question, I guess, on the translating. Were there words or concepts that simply just you don't think translated well into modern English?
Yeah, the one that pops in my brain the most is idolum, which is technically means idol, and JF translated it as sense, which I don't think is incorrect, actually. But I don't think it. If you read, so basically, idolum in context is one of the three parts of the soul. It's the bottom part of the soul, and it's like the feet of the soul. And so he translates it as sense, which I don't think is incorrect. But if you're reading this, I don't think it sticks out enough. So I left it untranslated with a footnote. Because idol doesn't make sense. Image, which is another translation, doesn't make sense. And then sense does make sense. But it's just, I think it just gets swallowed up too much. And I don't think it really fits with the connotation very well. So what it's meant to be is it's the part of your soul that sort of like touches the physical part of you, which is why sense kind of like fits a little bit. But like what's interesting is the chain of being, if you think of the chain as being like, links, the bottom part of the chain is going to be the idolum, and the top part is going to be the soul. And the top part of your link, the soul, is going to touch the bottom, the idolum of the spirits above you. And it kind of like fits that way. So each link has like three parts to it. So the bottom part of one link connects with the top part of the link below it. But yeah, so idolum is that word that sticks out the most.
Thank you.
There's a lot of astrological terms though that got mistaken.
Thanks for that actual example. I have like one other question before I ask like maybe one closing one. This is maybe a little bit of a controversial question. From what I remember, Agrippa later wrote a book criticizing occult sciences. Do you think he changed his mind about magic, or was that something else? Or do you think he was saying that to cover his ass? I've heard a lot of different things. Or was it even him? I don't know.
It wasn't a later book. It was so the
yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. I did have it written down, but I don't know how to say that.
Oh no, it's the Vanity of the Arts and Sciences. Okay, so basically the first book that I know of that he wrote was 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
It was what was called the Juvenile Draft. It was only a manuscript, and that was the copy that was sent to Trithemius. And he wrote that when he was in his 20s. So if you want to feel bad about what you've accomplished in your 20s, there you go. That version was much smaller than what we have today. And there was less Kabbalah in it as well. Anyway, so then he went on and wrote other books. So back then, there were no publishers. So what he did is he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And then at one point got permission, royal privilege, to publish books, which basically meant they gave him money to print a bunch of books. So he had a backlog. And so the Vanity of the Arts and Sciences, he wrote later than the first edition of 3, or the first manuscript of 3 books, but way before the final edition of 3 books. So the last book that he published was 3 books of occult philosophy. And that was what I was mentioning, that has like the little sections on the different areas of human knowledge, where he just kind of like makes fun of them about being like insufficient and kind of silly and this kind of stuff, but which all pale in comparison to the true knowledge of God. And so he does have sections on necromancy, Goetia, different kinds of divination, so on and so forth. And that those are quotes from Vanity of the Arts and Sciences. So as to if he recanted, I don't believe so. Reason being is that after he wrote the Vanity of the Arts and Sciences, he was continuing to edit and polish 3 books of occult philosophy. So he wasn't really recanting it. I think that he matured. He in the introductions to 3 books, he does kind of give himself a little bit of an out by saying, "Well, I wrote this when I was a kid." If you don't like it, that makes sense because I think it's dumb too, basically. So he's giving himself a little bit of an out. So a little bit of protection. That's one of the reasons why I think he has all of those like letters at the beginning, is it shows that he knew important people. And he was sent to the Inquisition or to the authorities, I think 4 times in his life. He never actually faced trial. It was all behind his back. And he was never jailed for any of his ideas. He was jailed for debts.
Yeah,
So I don't believe he recanted it. I do believe he matured. I think that his ideas got more well-rounded as he got older. He definitely did astrology. He definitely did alchemy. He does make a couple of little statements here and there about things that he has done. He had a very, what's the word I want to use? Emanationist view of magic. A very kind of high-minded emanationist view of it. So I think that kind of like, colored the way he spoke about magic a little bit. He does make statements that if you only rely on diamonds and nature for your magic, then you're going to be misled. And what he means by that is that he believes that it isn't that working with nature is bad and diamonds are bad. It's that if you believe those are the sources of magic, it's bad. So as long as you kind of like kept one foot on the floor and thought of God, then you're doing pretty much the right thing. So.
I like that. Then I have 2 questions left before we wrap it up, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Do you? After spending so much time with Agrippa's work and looking at it, is there like any idea from the book that has stayed with you the most, or anything from the book that has impacted you the most? Do you think?
I think now, after reading it as many times as I have, I cannot help but think of these the whole chain of being is kind of ingrained in my head now, and my brain is sort of like I have 2. I mean, we all have 2 halves of our brain, but I have 2 sort of like competing thoughts all the time. Because like on one hand, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I was kind of raised in Santeria and Leukemia. It's completely not book based. And it's based on like teachers and lineages and experience and all this. And so one part of my brain thinks in that way where I'm just like, screw the books. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make magic work and have divination that works. And I really don't care what people do, honestly. Like, I don't care if like you're using bibliomancy with Twilight. If it works for you and you're able to tell the future and make things happen, then I think you're probably doing something right. So I don't really browbeat people on what they do. I may have personal opinions on things, but I'm not going to I don't really care. But the other part of my brain is I had this kind of like book brain at the same time. And I really get into like where things come from and how things are put together. And I have a lot of books. I really like that a lot. And so it's like, I have this one side of my brain that keeps thinking of like hierarchies and chain of being and how things kind of fit together. That's all happening at the same time, which sort of contradicts what I do sometimes. So I don't know, I'm a little confusing.
I think we all are.
Yeah, there we go. We contain multitudes.
And then the last one that I had. If Agrippa were alive today and could see how his book has influenced centuries of occultism, what do you think? How do you think he would feel about that? Or what do you think about that?
I think he would probably want to rewrite his book.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. He, this is not an authoritative statement, but he was on the spectrum, I think, and I think it's why he got in trouble a lot.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much anti-authority, and he spent his entire life writing 3 books. I mean, he wrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it, and I think he would tell people, I don't know, to kind of like move on a little bit, because it's like I don't know, it's kind of a difficult thing today because like we're trying to, because today we're trying to reconstruct things, and and I think we just put too much reverence on certain like authorities, and so as much as it's like I will teach 3 books of occult philosophy as long as I can, and I love the book, but it's almost like it helped teach me how to like have a worldview, like a magical worldview, as opposed to like wanting to be Agrippa. And I think Agrippa would probably rewrite it, especially considering like what we have available today. I can't imagine what somebody like Agrippa would have said, having like multiple translations of like the Corpus Hermeticum and having translations of Arabic texts, and having the freedom to do what you want, basically. I mean, what would he do with that? I think he'd rewrite his book.
Yeah, well, I would just think with the amount of information there is out there today and how he'd be able to research differently.
Yeah. I mean, so in a way, I think he would tell people to move on. Watch what I do next, or something. I don't know.
Next, I like that.
Or I'm changing my mind, or something.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have that much stuff available. When you think about it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like if you put him, in today's day and age, if he was to rewrite
the astrology alone is just blowing my mind. It's like, like Latin astrology texts really boiled down to about 10 Arabic texts, maybe. And those 10 Arabic texts, of which there are many more in Arabic that weren't translated, kind of boiled down to about 7 or 8 Greek texts, of which there are more.
Okay.
And so like magic and astrology, it has like this like, through all like the transmissions that we have, it just keeps getting narrower and narrower until today. And that's why I'm kind of curious where this is all going, because it's like now we have like, I have like, I don't know, 15, 20 Greek texts right now that have been translated. It's like, that's never happened in history. Not even in the Hellenistic period. I doubt they even had that many books available to them.
Could you imagine how many we would have if the Alexandrian library was still around?
Well, that's a sad thing. I mean, we have I read a while back that we have less than 1% of all the ancient books available to us, and less than 1% of those are even available to us right now. Which is why I kind of bristle whenever people talk like authoritatively about what people did in magic anytime in history. It's like, you don't know that. You don't know anything. I don't know anything. You definitely don't know anything.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
None of us were there. I mean, I just see people say things like Goetia is like the foundation of Western magic. I'm like, you don't know that. You don't know that. It's like, that's the books we have. We just don't know that. You don't. I mean, it's like there's all sorts of things that have been done.
Surviving texts, and that's like an opinion.
What's that?
It's like a surviving text and an
It's
opinion.
the surviving text.
Yeah, an opinion. Yeah.
I mean, I know with astrology alone, like the main source texts that everybody referred to in the ancient world don't exist anymore, because we have fragments of them and people refer to them and quote them, but we don't have the books anymore. I mean, Homer, you know, the story of like the Trojan horse and all that doesn't exist anymore. It's like from third parties, but the actual Homeric text doesn't exist anymore. We know the story, but the books, I mean, like the whole Odyssey and Iliad, that was part of like a 7-book, something like that series. We only have 2 of them. So, yeah, we don't know anything.
I think I'm pretty much done with my questions. Judith, you got anything else?
Right now, no, but
Right.
it's actually, you've given me a lot to deep dive about when it comes to the history of astrology.
It's a rabbit hole. It's a huge rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah, sure. All right, yeah. Then I think we can wrap it up now. 2 hours too. Jeez, that went by fast.
I told you I can ramble.
No, thank you very much for spending that much time. I really appreciate it.
Don't get me started.
It was a solid interview. I got a lot of questions, actually, so thank you. Judith, please let everybody know where they can find your work.
First and foremost, thank you for having me here, Nick. Thank you for coming on, Eric. Hopefully I get to have a deeper conversation after I do my proper research again later on down the road. You could reach me at YouTube and on X for my weekly brunch and my buddy check every month at YouTube and on X under the Loon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you coming on, Judith. And Eric, please remind everybody again where they can find all of your stuff.
My website is ericpurdue.com. PUR, not PER like the chicken. It's like the university. And although it's not lost on me that the 2 editions of Agrippa that are popular right now are written by 2 people with the names of chicken companies. But yeah, so ericpurdue.com, and I think I'm most active on Instagram, which is like traditional esoterica, but also if you just type in my name, it'll show up. And I'm occasionally on the other ones when I remember it that they're there. And yeah, and my book, Inner Traditions, I would recommend getting it from Inner Traditions. Because Amazon's evil. But I also get the highest royalties from the publisher, not from Amazon. I used to sell them personally, but it's a pain to do it, and I don't sell them anymore. So, but if you ever run into me on the street and you want me to sign it, I'll do that.
Cool.
Awesome.
Nice. Eric, again, thank you so much. That was an amazing,
thank you.
Show. I really appreciate it. Again, Judith, thank you for joining me. And everybody in the chat, thank you. And thank you for the, who is that? I don't even know how to pronounce that. Something like no Hillix allowed or something like that. Thank you for the $5 super chat. The question. I really appreciate that. And yeah, that's the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.